Shavua Tov. We celebrate Purim for the miracle that happened, but what was the miracle that happened? Unlike Hanukkah, where the miracle is clear, there was candles that burnt longer than should have been able to. There was a war, Pesach, there were 10 plagues, and so forth. But what was the miracle of Purim? Was it the fact that Esther became the queen, and therefore she was in the right place at the right time? Was it the fact that Mordechai, the Jew, her uncle, overheard a plot to kill the king and was able to get the message to the king through Esther and therefore to save the king's life, which created gratitude, which ultimately caused the king to turn against Haman, who had plotted to destroy the Jewish people? There were many things that happened, and each of them was a critical thing that could be defined as being the main miracle of Purim. But what was it? There's nothing that's really jumping out and standing out, unlike all these other holidays. Second of all, the name of the holiday itself is kind of strange. Pur is a lottery. It's referring to the fact that Haman, who was a descendant of the Amalekites, sought to destroy the entire Jewish people. And he chose the date when this was going to happen by lottery, by basically picking it out of a hat. And so that is a Pur, a lottery. And therefore we call the holiday after the method through which Haman chose the date to annihilate the Jewish people. That seems like giving the name of the holiday after one seemingly insignificant detail. Why not give it a bigger name, the holiday of Mordechai and Esther? But if you don't want to use a name, the holiday of salvation, of Hatzalah, we were saved. I don't know, find something a little more inspiring. That's a kind of a strange name. Thirdly, the rabbis claim that at the end of the story, when the Jewish people decided to celebrate this occurrence and make a holiday out of it, the phrase kiyamu v'kiblu, they fulfilled and they accepted. They fulfilled and they accepted to keep this holiday. But the rabbis say that's not referring to the holiday itself, that basically the Jews re-accepted the entire Torah. Well, that's kind of strange. It doesn't say that in the Megillah. It just says that they fulfilled and accepted to observe these days of Purim as a festival. It doesn't say that they accepted the whole Torah, so how do the rabbis know that? Finally, there is a folk interpretation that Purim is superior to even Yom Kippur. How so? Because Yom Kippur, which we would assume is the holiest day of the year, the full name of Yom Kippur in the Torah is Yom Kippurim, a day of atonements, but it's also Yom, a day, Ki, which could be like, a day like Purim, Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim. And well, you usually compare the lesser to the greater, implying that Purim is greater than Yom Kippur. How so? So we could perhaps answer it through a seemingly technical detail about the Torah reading on Purim morning. We also not just read the Megillah of Esther on Purim day, we also read from the Torah. And when it comes on a weekday, we read the chapter which tells about the battle against Amalek, the progenitors of Haman and his ilk, the Amalekites, who attacked us as we left Egypt. And that story takes place right after the splitting of the Red Sea. That's the reading on Purim morning. There is a problem with that reading. What's the problem? It's not long enough. Because the rule is, the rabbis say, that any Torah reading has to have a minimum of 10 verses. And that little chapter about Amalek has 9. It's not long enough. How are we allowed to have such a reading? Well, the technical answer is that the rabbis say, since the topic is only covered in 9 verses, and the stuff which comes before and the stuff which comes after is irrelevant, so therefore we can't read that, so we'll make an exception. Okay, exceptions are fine. But there's another explanation which comes to us from the great Maharal of Prague, the Rabbi Yehuda Levi of Prague, the one famous for the Golem stories. He says that this is really a significant number, 9. 9 is a worldview of the Amalekites. And 10 is a worldview of the Israelites. It's the battle between 9 and 10. What is the worldview of the Amalekites? They believe in chance. They believe that everything is random. There is no providence. They're basically atheistic. There is no divine guidance. Whatever happens, it's all disconnected. And the Israelites say the opposite. There is divine guidance. There is a hand guiding history. There is judgment. There is a judge. Everything that happens is part of an overall plan. That is the difference between 9 and 10, because 9 is a number which is the largest number of individual parts, which is not a group, which has no unifying aspect to it. 9 is the most divisible of numbers. Therefore, everything that happens in the world, says Amalek, is 9, is random, it's chance. That's why Haman chose the date to annihilate the Jews by picking it out of a hat, by using chance. The description in the book of Deuteronomy of what Amalek did to us is Asher karacha baderech. He came upon you by the way, and that word karacha comes from the same root as he happened upon you by chance. But the Jewish people says there's no such thing as chance. Even though things seem to be completely contradictory, they are all part of a big jigsaw puzzle being run by the divine artist, by the guiding hand of God himself. And therefore the number 10 is also a number of multiple parts, but they are unified. The Hebrew letter, which symbolizes 10, is the Yud, which is a little dot. It's all part, it's all connected. The next letter is Kaf, which is 20. So after 10, we already go in groups of 10. 10 is a big Jewish number. The world was created with 10 utterances. We had the 10 plagues, the 10 commandments, perhaps even the 10 Sons of Haman is significant, because it's the 10 which says that all of the contradictory things that seem to be random are not random at all. There is a hand guiding it all. The Battle of Nines versus Tens. And if that's the case, then perhaps we can understand what the miracle of Purim was. We'll get a first understanding. It's similar to a famous story, and if you haven't read it or if you're planning to see the movie, you can fast forward. Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, where Inspector Hercule Poirot attempts to solve a murder on that famous train, the Orient Express. There are a lot of suspects who had a good reason to want the guy dead, and he comes to the conclusion that it was not one of those suspects. It was all of them. They each came one after the other and stabbed the guy. Well, I hope you fast forwarded. If you didn't, watch it anyway. It's a great movie. And the same thing, lahavdil, in Purim. It wasn't any one of these little happenstance things. It was the fact that they all happened like a huge jigsaw puzzle being run by God to bring about the salvation of the Jews of Persia. And that was the miracle. Very good. And that would explain also why the name of the holiday is Purim, is about the raffles. It really should be singular, but there were two raffles here. One was the way Haman perceived of it, the Amalekites. They thought that the chance was just that, random chance, no connection, no worries, no providence. We'll get away with it. But the Jews, they see the same raffle and they say something else. This is divine providence. He thinks it's chance, we know it's not. So therefore it's Purim. Okay. But the rabbis actually give us a little more guidance into what the miracle might be. In the Ethics of the Fathers, the Brayata, it's a Talmudic period writing, tells us the following. Whoever says something in the name of the one who said it, meaning they give attribution, brings redemption to the world. Wow. By saying something in the name of the one who said it, we bring redemption to the world, and the proof is from the story of Esther. Esther tells the king about the plot of Bigtan and Teresh to kill him in the name of Mordechai. She gives credit to Mordechai as being the one who found out about the plot. And well, since that got into the records, the king later was grateful to Mordechai for having saved his life. And when he finds out that Haman wanted to kill Mordechai, to hang him on a tree, well, that certainly helped Achashverosh to turn on Haman and to hang him instead. So therefore that brought about the redemption. Now the question is, that's very nice when you're Esther and you're the queen of the Persian Empire and we're talking high politics. But the rabbis are saying this even about a student in a school who says, I heard from Rabbi so-and-so, I heard from my mother, I heard from this, I heard from that this person is also bringing the redemption. How so? This is a small, insignificant thing. They're saying it in the name of someone else. Very nice. But how is that bringing redemption? I get it with Esther and Mordechai. I don't get it in the local school. But there's an answer. It's one word, and I'll quote Tevye from Fiddler on the Roof. Tradition. Once you recognize tradition, you quote the one who said it, you realize you are part of a chain. Once you say that, you are also recognizing that that chain started with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it's going straight to the redemption. You are basically saying, I am part of the jigsaw puzzle of Jewish history, and I believe that everything that happens is moving us forward on that march towards redemption. We are just another station on that path. In other words, you now recognize that every separate part is really all part of an overall plan. The Maharal of Prague sharpens this, and he says that God performs miracles for people who recognize those miracles. But if God gives a gift to someone and the person doesn't accept the gift or doesn't use it for the good, then God won't give them that gift anymore. So therefore the Maharal says that had Esther told the king about the plot to kill him, without mentioning that it came from Mordecai, then she would not have been worthy to bring about the salvation of the Jewish people. Why? Because at the end of the day, if they were saved, she would say, I happen to have been a very astute politician. I knew just how to maneuver my husband and Haman and everything to make sure that it all turned out all right. She wouldn't give credit where credit was due, which is to God. But since she said, she was Esther the queen, she was very righteous, since she said to the king about the plot of Bigtan and Teresh in the name of Mordecai, she showed that she gives credit where credit is due, and at the end of the day, all of these disparate things that happen, she will not take credit for it herself, she will give credit where credit is due to God. And that is the miracle of Purim, that the Jews celebrated Purim, that they chose to celebrate Purim, because they could have done the same thing. They could have brushed it off and said, well, we had good luck. We had smart political leadership. We had good policy. No, the politicians, they love to take credit for things that they had nothing to do with. And, well, the Jews could have easily gone down the same path, and so could Esther. But they didn't. They chose to see in all of these random, mundane, disconnected occurrences and happenstances a divine plan, a divine jigsaw puzzle. And thus, the choice to celebrate the holiday of Purim, perhaps that was the real cause of the miracle of the Jews being saved. And as a result, that would explain why the Jews' acceptance of the holiday is really an acceptance of the Torah itself, because they are accepting that they are part of tradition, that they are part of a divine plan, a divine march, which started with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and goes straight to the redemption. That is the significance of the holiday of Purim, and that's how it is superior to Yom Kippur, because on Yom Kippur, it's no great trick to be righteous. It's easy. Everybody is fasting. Everybody's praying. It's easy to get swept up in that mood. But on Purim, when we eat and we drink, we go about our regular daily affairs, and we could easily brush off everything that happened to astute political leadership and just good luck, but we don't. We choose to become close to God. That is even greater. Now, the echoes of this miracle of Purim, of God's control of history, and the story of Esther and the Megillah itself, have even been heard in the modern era. And I'll even give you a specific year and a specific date. Those of you who know this and those who don't, it's an amazing, amazing thing in the Megillah. The 10 sons of Haman were killed on the 13th of Adar, and their names are written. And in the names of the 10 sons of Haman are 3 letters which are written smaller than the usual font size, if you will, by the scribe, thus is tradition, and 1 that is written larger. The 3 small letters are Taf, Shin, and Zayin, and the larger number is Vav. Why are these letters written at a different size? Continuing along in the next chapter, so it describes how the 10 sons of Haman were killed on the 13th of Adar back then, and at the end of that day the king asks Esther and Mordecai if there's anything else that they need. And they say, we would like to have tomorrow to do like we did today, and we will hang the 10 sons of Haman. Why hang the 10 sons of Haman? You killed them on the 13th of Adar. You killed them today. What's the point in hanging them tomorrow? Unless we say that tomorrow is not the next day, but tomorrow is way in the future, thousands of years in the future. Perhaps it's in a year indicated by those different sized letters. Vav, the large letter, is the numerical value of 6, which is implying the 6th millennium, the years that start with 5,000. And Taf, Shin, and Zayin added up come to the numerical value of 707. So the year 5,707, perhaps that's the tomorrow that Esther is talking about when they will hang the 10 sons of Haman. What happened in 5,707? That year commenced at the end of September in 1946. That was the year. On the 16th of October, 1946, excuse me, which is a date in the Hebrew calendar of a holiday called Hoshana Rabbah, excuse me, which according to tradition is the day of judgment for the nations of the world. On that date in 1946, after the Nuremberg trial of leading Nazi war criminals, The big batch that was convicted were brought out to be executed on the 16th of October, 1946. How many of them were there that were going to be killed that day? 10. The 10 sons of Haman, the 10 descendants of Amalek. And how were they to be killed? By hanging. Esther says to the king, we would like to do tomorrow like we did today and hang the 10 sons of Haman. It happened October 16th, 1946. And the last one of those Nazis to be hanged was a man named Julius Streicher. May his memory be blotted out. He was the editor of Die Stürmer, the Nazi newspaper, whose job it was to incite the population against the Jews. Now, the first 9 went to their deaths in some semblance of self-control. But Streicher went crazy. He was screaming and shouting gibberish and nonsense. And at one point he said 2 strange words that made no sense. He said, Purim Fest, 1946. On October 16th, Purim Fest? This is what he's talking about? Now, the rabbis teach us that prophecy doesn't exist today, but in the mouths of crazy people, sometimes prophecies come forth. Perhaps he uttered a prophecy. Who knows? Streicher was familiar with Jewish tradition because, as a head hater of the Jews, he studied a lot and he understood the Purim story. He knew about the 10 sons of Haman. He knew it all. It could be that Streicher was simply pointing out to us, perhaps through his temporary insanity, that this was the tomorrow. And these were the 10 sons of Haman. Well, Haman, the Megillah tells us, was frightened and shocked in front of the king and the queen when his gig was up. You see, at that moment, he realized that he had been in error. Randomness does not exist. There is judgment, there is a judge. And that's perhaps exactly the same thing that Julius Streicher was saying. There is judgment, there is a judge. There's no randomness. It's all part of a divine plan. And when we choose to celebrate it, to celebrate the holiday of Purim, we are recognizing our place in tradition. We are recognizing that we are part of a glorious march which started with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and is going straight to the redemption. May everybody have a joyous afterglow of Purim and a wonderful week, and may that redemption come soon.